And so welcome everyone to this WIN event, the Women's Informal Network. And my name is Chitra Deshpande, and I'm from our WIN Rome chapter. And I'm glad to see our other leadership here, and that's Marilena Heinrich and Tiziana Galloni. And today we have a special session on mindfulness in a time of COVID. So playing on the title of a famous novel that many of you may know. And I think now here we are in March, and we're marking 1 year of the pandemic really hitting those of us who are in Italy and Rome, and 1 year of teleworking. And it's interesting to reflect back how a year ago, I thought everything would be back to normal by May, and how strange that and how silly that seems now. But it's been 1 year, and so it's been, rather than a short race, a brief period, it's been more of a marathon. That I think for many of us, it seems like that end is still unclear. And so I think also at this point, many people are hitting the pandemic wall. And so we wanted to offer our WIN members, in case you've reached it or you may reach it, tools to help you cope and adapt in this new setting, this new COVID. Now it's been a year, but still it's ever changing and new. And WIN this year, we also have a special program focusing on well-being. And we launched that jointly with our New York chapter, and I'm really glad to see Daniela here from New York. And so we launched it last week, our well-being program, with a session with Therese Fitzpatrick, who's the global lead on mental health and well-being in the UN system. And we had a very nice moment of sharing then. And now this week, we can follow up with further tools to help you maybe achieve greater well-being. And I think for me, mindfulness has been extremely helpful. And I'm very pleased to have Pam Powers with us. Pam was my teacher of mindfulness a few years ago, and I've been using it throughout the period. Sometimes I'm better at my practice than at other times. So I'm very glad to have Pam. And Pam Powers has 30 years of experience of personal practice in meditation and mindfulness disciplines, and has been training individuals, schools, organizations in mindfulness for the past 15 years. She leads courses on applications of mindfulness, such as mindfulness-based stress reduction, acceptance and commitment therapy, and mindfulness cognitive therapy. And so we're very honored and pleased to have her introduce us to some mindfulness practice. And we hope to open with a meditation, and then Pam will speak to us about mindfulness. And then we hope to also, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. And then we hope to close with a meditation as well. So at this point, I just want to welcome you and thank you, Pam. Over to you.
Thank you, Chitra, and a warm welcome to everybody in our virtual community this evening. So I mentioned that it would be nice to start with a little meditation. And as we do this, we might hear the entry bell a few times. And we can use that as an object of mindfulness as well. So starting off by giving permission to outside sounds that might be coming and going. So could I ask you, wherever you are, to get as comfortable in your seat or on your cushion as you can. And making sure that the hips are aligned and that the sitting bones are stable, so that you have a sense of steadiness and stability in the body, and that you are open through the chest and the center of the body. Often when we're sitting, we tend to collapse a little bit on the diaphragm. So we want to just gently open up to allow breath to come and go with ease. And then also briefly just checking in with the shoulders, which during the day tend to creep up toward the ears, seeing if we can deliberately drop those and to start to give the mind through the body the idea of being alert, but also at ease. And then you can either drop your gaze to the floor or close the eyes, whichever you prefer. And taking a moment simply to notice where the mind is right now. What you may have brought with you into the room this evening from earlier in the day. And allowing the possibility that you can gather the mind. And center your awareness right into the body. So coming home to the body. And getting acquainted with the felt sense of sitting where you are. So it can be helpful to ground our awareness by really feeling into the sitting bones and the sense of support in that plane of contact where the sitting bones meet the cushion or the chair underneath you. And to be aware of the plane of contact between the hands and whatever it is that they're resting on now. So gently sweeping the body and looking for any areas where there is held tension or tightness. And seeing if it's possible just to allow a little ease into those areas. And then gathering awareness into the rise and the fall of the breath in the body. So just a gentle resting of awareness in this breathing in and this breathing out. Most of us will find quite quickly that when we try to rest awareness in the breath, the mind wanders off, gets busy. And this isn't an indication of failure. It's simply an opportunity to notice with kindness that the mind has wandered off and to gently escort attention back into the felt sense of the breath, coming and going in the body, just as it is right now. So in these few minutes of meditation, we give ourselves permission to stop doing things and to simply be with our experience as it's arising and passing away. So without having to judge anything, chase after anything, get rid of anything, simply noticing with interest and curiosity, anchoring in the breath, receptive and open to our experience just as it is. So in the last couple of minutes of this brief meditation, gently bringing awareness back into the breath and seeing if it's possible to experience the breath fulfilling its purpose so that the in-breath refreshes, restores, renews, and the out-breath releases anything that the body and the mind no longer need. So I've been asked to talk about mindfulness in the time of COVID, and a welcome to all of you who came along to this time together a little bit later. So what occurred to me was that what we've been going through with this past year, of course, has been a different experience for each one of us, but there are some conditions that we've all had to face. And when we talk about mindfulness, it has most meaning in the context of Buddhist philosophy and psychology. And Buddhist psychology says that there are 3 marks of existence, or what we might call 3 kind of inescapable conditions of being human. And the first one of those is impermanence. So what's meant by that is that everything is in a state of change and flux, and that there's a lot of uncertainty in our experience, and it's not possible to pin down good things or to entirely get rid of bad things. So of course, this is something that we've faced on a daily basis since this pandemic began. The sense of constant change, constant uncertainty, canceled plans, things being very different from what we expected. And this is very stressful for us in varying ways. And then the second condition described is sometimes called non-self, but I think an easier way to describe it would be to call it interdependence. And what's meant by that is that all of us are in a network or a web without which we wouldn't exist. So for example, the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh often says, smile to the cloud in your tea. And what he means by that is that your tea would not be here in your cup if it weren't for the sun that shone on it, the rain that fell on it, the workers that picked it, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to be aware that everything in our experience is completely interconnected and enmeshed. And one aspect of that is that we don't have complete control over our experience or our life, much as we'd like to think that we do. So this too is something that has come up a great deal in the past years. I'm sure you've all recognized this has become COVID has become a life lesson in what we can't control. It reminds me of, we used to say, if you think that something small can't make a big difference, you've never been in bed with a mosquito. And that comes to mind with COVID as well, this infinitesimally small virus that has literally shut down the world. So it's made us aware of how interdependent we are in the planet, and also how we are not in control of things entirely in our experience, much as we'd like to be. And then the third mark of existence, or inescapable condition, is what we might call dissatisfaction. And what's meant by that in Buddhist psychology is that as human beings, we cannot avoid unhappiness or dissatisfaction. There will be many times during our life experience where we come up on things that we don't want, or things that we did want that have gone away. And that is a fact of life. So this also is something we've all had to deal with to varying degrees. Things have changed a great deal, like our kind of loss of social bonds, which has made us feel a little bit more fearful or isolated or separate from one another. We're spending increasing time on devices compared to the past, and that has its own level of dissatisfaction that comes with it, as well as sometimes a pleasant distraction. And just all the other emotions that I'm sure many of us have encountered over this past year, starting with fear and moving on to doubt, sometimes anger. There's a lot of anger around COVID now. People are with varying opinions, getting quite loud about it. So it's been difficult in all sorts of ways. So the reason understanding these three marks of existence is important, at least in the context of Buddhist psychology, is the possibility that when we accept that these things are a part of our lives, rather than constantly trying to control circumstances or insist on happiness or be certain about what's happening next, we come a little bit closer to what we might call inner peace or serenity. The writer Bhante Gunaratana, I might have butchered his name, but he's a very lucid writer about mindfulness. And he says, I think maybe nobody puts it better, he says, the ironic thing is that real peace comes only when we stop chasing it. And you may have had that experience yourself, that it's when we can finally allow things to be as they are, that what we would call real stable inner peace arrives for us. So I suppose we could ask what these COVID circumstances are asking of us, which is kind of what life in general is asking from us. And the kind of qualities that mindfulness cultivates are particularly useful in these difficult times, and that's exactly why mindfulness exists. Its purpose is to help us deal with the things that we do feel dissatisfied or unhappy about, the things that we cannot control, and the ways in which life is impermanent. So one of the kind of qualities that we are cultivating as we practice mindfulness, and which comes out of the practice of mindfulness, is what we might call patience. And that's our capacity to sit in meditation regardless of what is coming and going, regardless of the good idea that tells us we should get up and get a cup of tea or go call someone. So we're cultivating in meditation this capacity to be with our experience as it comes and goes, without necessarily obeying or believing our thoughts and our feelings. So thoughts and feelings do come and go in mindfulness meditation all the time, but they have a lot less authority than they do when we're going about our daily lives. And then a second quality that's very important to mindfulness, again, we come into the practice with it, and the more that we practice it, the more it becomes a kind of trait for us, is acceptance. And so by acceptance, we don't necessarily mean that we accept things, we're resigned to things as they are. This is still, mindfulness and Buddhist psychology still have very much this emphasis on doing what's right and protecting ourselves and keeping ourselves from harm and other people from harm. But it is about acknowledging that there will be certain conditions in life that come and go that we can't control. And the possibility of accepting things brings inner peace in a more stable way than constantly trying to fix or avoid conditions. And just as an aside, we find this very often with anxiety. Mindfulness-based psychotherapy goes on the pretense that our attempts to control anxiety or panic are actually what causes more anxiety. And at the point that we can build up some tolerance for a feeling of anxiety, that's when anxiety itself actually starts to subside. So there's a kind of paradox that's inherent in acceptance. And then a third quality that we're cultivating with mindfulness is kindness and compassion. And in fact, it's not mindfulness if these qualities are not coming along with us. So when we had this brief meditation at the beginning of our meeting tonight, we were noticing when the mind moves away, when it wanders off, but we're accepting that. And with kindness, we are returning the attention to the breath or the body or whatever the anchor is that is keeping us here and helping steady the mind. So kindness and compassion are something that I think as women we're very good at with other people, but maybe not so good at it with ourselves. And the practice of mindfulness is very much about building a sense of compassion toward ourselves and our own experience. And then two other qualities of mindfulness that I'd just like to mention are what we might call non-reactivity. So it's sometimes described that every experience that we have in life is a kind of stimulus. You know, we've often heard of this stimulus response kind of thing from early science. And mindfulness is the pause between a stimulus and a response. So it is our capacity to experience whatever is happening in our lives, however difficult it is, and to pause long enough to know what the appropriate or non-harmful response would be for ourselves and for others, rather than immediately jumping into reactivity, which we tend to do when we're stressed out or anxious or worried or angry. And then the final quality that's very central to a mindfulness practice is equanimity. And equanimity is actually, we might say, the purpose of mindfulness. So if you're, mindfulness is one of those words that has become very popular in recent years, and that's because it is really helpful for reducing stress and helping with emotional and cognitive difficulties. But it is sometimes reduced to the idea of being here now. And that the being here now is a means towards an end. It's not sufficient simply to be here now. my Dharma teacher once said to me, if you think about it, snipers are here now and they're performing their job. So mindfulness is a lot more than simply bringing our attention into the present moment. It requires these certain qualities as well. And the idea of equanimity is basically that we are willing to stand near whatever is arising and passing away in our experience, regardless of whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, comfortable or uncomfortable, whether we want it or whether we don't want it. So that's quite a tall task, and it's not something that comes immediately as we practice meditation. But it's something we can see as an aspiration in the practice, that over time, we develop this steadiness of mind and stability of mind and heart that allows us to approach whatever is here in our experience, however beautiful or difficult it is, with a willingness to show up and to respond skillfully and in a non-harming way. So I remember years ago hearing that there was an experiment done with a number of people to find out if you dropped them in the middle of a forest and told them to go back to base camp without any maps or obviously iPhones or anything like that, what would happen? Could they find their way? And apparently this experiment was run on 2 occasions. And what was discovered was that people will basically go in a big circle rather than ever finding their way back to wherever they were meant to be. And that really kind of struck me or stuck with me, because I think this is part of the difficulty that all of us encounter. It's kind of a metaphor for the ways in which we go in circles with our own mental patterns, the emotions of maybe sadness or anxiety or worry that plague us. We do as humans have this tendency to go in circles and to ruminate and to repeat the same things, even though we know that they're not helping us. And mindfulness is basically a way to break that chain, to find our way out of that circle, and to stop responding in an automatic, reactive way when we're confronted with difficulty, and instead to be able to come from a place of stability and steadiness, which has been cultivated through meditation and also through small practices that we perform during the day, which we call informal mindfulness. So I'd like actually to turn things over to you and answer a few questions if you have anything that you'd like to ask about your experience of the meditation or mindfulness meditation in general, or anything that I've just said. And feel free to either ask or to write into the chat.
And Pam, I can help facilitate in seeing if anyone's written anything in the chat or not. And feel free to, I can also, if you want to put a raised hand in the, the normal Zoom raised hand, or if you want to show your hand. And maybe while we wait for people to react and ask questions, or I just wanted to maybe ask you a bit about equanimity, because that really struck me in terms of sort of being in the now and responding skillfully. And I was wondering, also just how does one does it happen automatically? By doing mindfulness meditation, do you automatically start, responding skillfully? And And what is this responding skillfully? Somehow in my mind, you know, as a Hindu, there's an idea, I was associating it with, you know, there's the detachment idea in Hinduism. I don't know if you're familiar, and so I'm not sure if you can respond, but is it similar to that, sort of being detached from your actions? Anyway, I'll just start with that question while maybe others have time to think of theirs.
Thank you. Yeah, Chitra, that's a really interesting point that you brought up about attachment. And we use the word in mindfulness and Buddhism as well. And the idea is that attachment, or sometimes what's called craving, is the chief cause of suffering in our lives. And so the kind of prescription from mindfulness is not detachment, but unattachment. So they're slightly different things. So when we talk about mindfulness having this quality of kindness and compassion, that is what allows us to be with an experience in an unattached as opposed to a detached way. So in other words, detachment can mean indifference. And what we're interested in cultivating with mindfulness is this capacity to be with whatever is arising with compassion and with kindness. And skillful is a broad word. You're really right, and it would change from every circumstance, certainly. But the highest goal we're talking about is non-harm to ourselves and non-harm to other people. So mindfulness is always practiced in that context. And I think that when we start practicing meditation and also mindfulness informally during the day, everybody has different experiences. Sometimes this sense of equanimity, of being able to experience difficult thoughts and difficult feelings without running away or shutting down, sometimes that comes very quickly to us. And at other times it feels like a struggle. But that's, of course, why we call it a practice, because the more that we sit and the more that we spend time with our own thoughts and feelings in silence, with steadiness and stillness, the more we're actually building that capability to respond skillfully to what's going on inside of us, as well as what's going on outside of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. That was helpful. And we have in the chat a question from Rebecca. I'll read it out. And she has a question regarding how to make meditation a habit. I have a problem with finding a good time to do this. Often my least stressful, most peaceful moment in the day is the evening, and then I have a need to fall asleep. So what is the best way to incorporate meditation into the day, and when is the best time? Thanks.
Yes, that's $1 million question that gets asked in every group I've ever taught, and so important, because mindfulness, actually, one of the original meanings of the word in Pali is remembering. So ironically, a lot of mindfulness is about developing our capacity to remember to be mindful, to remember to call our attention back and to be present and aware. And I think that the best time for meditation is going to vary from one person to another. I can tell you that from my own experience, I always do it first thing in the morning. And for people who work, that often means getting up a half hour earlier, which I realize is difficult, or getting up before the kids or before the dogs or something like that, and it is hard. My experience with about 30 years of meditation is that if I don't do it first thing in the morning, and even if my meditation cushion is right where I trip over it for the rest of the day, I won't manage to fit it into my day. So I would encourage you to try the morning, and the evening. There are two ways of looking at the tiredness. One is that if we discover coming back to the body and the mind that we're really tired or exhausted, then the skillful thing to do is to rest or to sleep. But sometimes it can be helpful to make sure that you're sitting up in this alert way. So in other words, if you want to meditate in the evening without falling asleep, just cultivating a posture that reminds the body and the mind that you're going to be awake and alert. So that's a little bit what we described at the beginning. It's also possible to get quite detailed descriptions about how to sit, whether you're on the cushion or the chair. But it's this possibility of a stable, grounded posture, and also a sense of openness and spaciousness so that the breath can come and go with ease.
Thank you, Pam. And just, please, anyone, if you have questions, maybe you want to also just share how you experienced that initial meditation. Did it maybe not do anything for you? Did it help you? And then, that's always, I think, some questions about that. Also, if you want to share if you've meditated before. And while we wait, Daniela, please.
Sorry. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Pamela, for getting us here. I think my question for you, and I'm not even sure how to phrase this question, but there is this dichotomy of mindfulness on a cushion or on the mat or on the chair or wherever we are in our space, and how do we translate that into our workplace, particularly in some contexts when you are dealing with tough situations, when even if you achieve that state of calmness, you may be perceived as like not there or not taking issues seriously, and not, I'm not sure if you're getting it, but we in many of our UN agencies, we have that, we are action, we are problem solvers, we are attracted to, dangerous, difficult situations and things like that. So when I'm trying to bring these discussions in the workplace, I feel either resistance of like, this doesn't belong here and I'm tough and I can handle everything, or I have this thing, okay, mindfulness is something that I do when I meditate in my private space, but how do we actually bring this into the conversation, particularly now that we're moving into this more of the mental health and well-being, and any tips that you have for us to get this message, as you alluded to. This does take practice. This is not something that we're going to just sit for 5 minutes and say, I know how to do it. It's one of the toughest things I've done. And I still don't think I've even begun to do it, because I started doing yoga and I realized the toughest asana is sitting still for like a minute, not tying myself in a pretzel. That eventually I was practicing. So if you have any tips for us, like how do we bring this into a conversation, and how do we know when we fall out of it? Because I know when I'm balancing, if I lose my balance, I fall. If I'm riding a bike, if something is not right, I fall. But if we lose that internal balance, we still keep going. We don't really completely come to a standstill, but how effective are we? I know it's a loaded question, but that's just what I'm trying to say. What advice do you have for us in our own workspaces, particularly, again, women talking to many men in the powerful positions? How do we broach this subject without them thinking, well, this is for your women's group and go over there, do your nice little things, but leave the workplace out of this? I don't know if that makes any sense for you, but I would love your thoughts.
It absolutely does. Thank you. An important question. And as you said, kind of a Russian doll of questions, a lot of interesting things in there. I mean, one thing that comes to mind immediately is the Buddha is often quoted. We don't know. Apparently there are a lot of quotes attributed to him that he didn't actually say, but as saying, I can think of no one thing more dangerous than an untrained mind. And that seems very, very right to me, because you are in these, in the UN agencies, you're talking about something, particular, the kind of atmosphere of, there's a lot of heroism, a lot of rescuing going on. So there's a kind of action-dominated environment. And maybe we could say that mindfulness is it's not simply about this stillness. It's about the willingness to pause long enough to know what an appropriate action will be under any circumstances. So that's kind of what we mean by the non-reactivity. You know, often we're coming from a point of anger or worry or panic or stress. And it tends to be that when we're coming from that standpoint, mentally or emotionally, we make the wrong decisions. In fact, it's one of the definitions of stress. Stress is all about fight, flight, or freeze, which means the blood drains from the brain and we're not able to think clearly. It goes to the extremities. So in that sense, we could think of mindfulness as reducing stress in whatever situation we're in, and it being quite crucial to making appropriate decisions in the workplace. And I think you're talking about a fine balance too. You know, as women, we don't, you know, we have to be careful not to be, or to be conceived of as passive. What we want is to be assertive in the workplace and in any situation that requires action on our part. And assertiveness is also something that requires us to not be under stress, you know, because what we tend to do, fight, flight, again, is passive, let someone else do it, disappear, run away, or aggressive, fight, get angry, push back, contradict, deny, etc. And those are, again, unskillful responses at either end of the spectrum. So to be in a place of assertiveness requires a certain stability and steadiness of mind. I don't know if that would help a bit. Okay, what would you advise when you find yourself in the midst of an anxiety attack when breathing seems difficult to start with? Yes, thank you. So sometimes, and in fact, this is a very important aspect of mindfulness that you've brought up. Sometimes when the breath is high and short because of anxiety or panic, we're told to slow down the breath or deepen the breath, and we find that might even make things worse. And that's a good example of mindfulness practice has an element of non-striving to it, which means that the moment that we're pushing or forcing things, we've actually fallen out of mindfulness, and it's not going to be helpful for us. So, so when we're having panic or anxiety, if gently slowing down or deepening the breath is not helpful, it can instead be helpful to gently shift awareness to something that helps you feel grounded where you are, helps you return to this present moment. So if we think of panic or anxiety, most of the time, could I say 90% of the time, is about something the mind is telling us, not something that is actually happening right now. So when we develop this kind of gentle skill of reminding the body and the mind, in this moment, I am safe and everything is okay, it helps, it tends to help. So I don't know if you remember in the meditation at the beginning, I focused on the sitting bones initially and the hands. And so anxiety tends to be held in the center of the body. That's where we tend to feel it, in the chest and the belly and the neck. And if we can bring gentle attention into the more neutral areas of the body, like what do the hands feel like right now? Or what do the sitting bones feel like in contact with the chair? Then that starts calming down the nervous system a little. And at that point, maybe a gentle change in the breath can be helpful. Anyone else?
Any other questions or wanting?
No?
Sorry, I dropped out for a second. Internet connection. Okay, I think Afshan has another question. Tips on how to bring attention back when the mind starts to wander. A very good question. I think we all need advice on.
Yeah. So we talk about an anchor in mindfulness. The anchor is something that is here with us in the present moment. That isn't an idea or a thought or a memory or something. So we most often use the body. That can be any place in the body, or the breath. When the mind starts to wander, the most difficult or challenging aspect when we're starting with mindfulness is to notice that the mind has wandered. And sometimes that takes a little while to notice, we've gone off on that daydream for 5 minutes before we recognize we're not here. So guided meditations can be helpful for that at the beginning. And then what we do, first of all, is recognize that the second that we recognize that the mind has wandered, we are being mindful. So it is not a failure that, the mind has wandered off. It's a success when you notice that the mind has wandered, and then we gently bring it back to whatever anchor feels most helpful for you. These are things that you can play with. So for example, with the breath, it's sometimes said that you can pay attention to the breath coming in and out of the nostrils, or you can use the center of the chest, the felt sense of the breath there, or the belly, or even what we might call in a broad sense, the life of the breath in the body. Where do we feel the breath as it moves in and out? It can be as far down as the hips, as high up as the shoulders and the neck. So just cultivating that curiosity on something that is here in the present moment and coming back over and over again. And that's the nature of practice. I think the more that we put our attention, return over and over again, the easier it becomes with time. Thank you.
Thank you for that good advice for us. Just do a time check. I guess we have about 7 minutes, and I'm not sure if there are any other questions, or just I think you wanted to sort of close also with the meditation. So just to raise that time clock.
Yeah. So I have a 5-week course starting on Sunday on equanimity. If you're interested in diving a little deeper with it, the easiest thing is just to send me an email, and I can send you the full announcement, and you can see if you're interested. And equally, if you'd like to be on my mailing list, it's about the only way that I make announcements for my courses. So I'd be happy to have your contact. So could we come back into an upright position? So once again, making sure that the hips are stable and aligned. Briefly scanning the body for points of bracing or tightness or tension. And seeing if it's possible to allow a little ease and opening and spaciousness in those areas and throughout the body. And if it's comfortable for you now, playing with the possibility of just very slightly lengthening and extending the breath. So allowing the breath to go a little bit deeper into the body as you breathe in. and to exhale fully and completely to the end of the out breath. So allowing thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background without getting tangled up in anything. And as much as possible, resting in the full, gentle in-breath and the smooth, extended out-breath. When the mind strays off, simply noticing that with kindness and returning to the breath and the body, just as they are now. And then bringing to mind this whole community here with us this evening. And all beings on the planet. May we all be safe and well. Now noticing whatever amount of peacefulness, steadiness, calmness you might have cultivated during this short practice, and allowing the possibility that you can bring that with you into the evening ahead.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you, Chitra, and everybody.
I really love the sound of that bell, I have to say. And I just hope that all of you had a good, peaceful meditation that'll carry many of you in New York through the rest of your day, and for others into the evening. And just to remind our members, again, our next well-being session will be on March 25th with the EFAD staff counselor, who will be talking about life traps. But our next event as WIN is on Monday, so next Monday on International Women's Day. So please join us to celebrate together with the OECD Women's Network. We've joined forces with this network that also started 5 years ago, like WIN, and this is an opportunity to network with the OECD women, as well as to discuss about the topic of this year's International Women's Day, women's leadership. and maybe focus on this period of the COVID context and in international institutions. And I hope you can, those of you who are in the Rome-based agencies, you can also join us for the RBA celebration in the morning and in the afternoon. And in the morning, I will be representing WINS. I'll be representing us. It's nice that we're on that stage and are recognized by our agencies. So please join us for that as well. And I just, thanks, I just also wanted to ask Daniela, do you want to share anything? Because Daniela is really pushing forward on this, on the well-being program in WIN. So I don't know if you have anything to share.
We are trying to do some other events, but right now I don't have anything concrete to say to you. Some people have asked whether there was a recording from the event we did. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we didn't record it. I think the idea was more to have a free space and discuss. But if you want for us to repeat it, we could do something similar now that we have a structure, and certainly Therese Fitzpatrick, who is sort of my project leader of this project, would be willing to do anything that we could ask for. We just have to be mindful with planning. But there is certainly something that has come out in this COVID and in all the surveys and all the research that women are impacted more. I mean, it's not a competition as who is struggling more. It's not about that, but it is about just being mindful of the fact that as women we have a difficult and challenging period behind us and probably ahead as well. So if that's something that anybody needs to reach out, or if you need a list of counselors, I think Therese shared, Xenia from New York, I put together a lot of resources like the strategy, like some tips, like some tools, particularly for you that are managers. That's what I was asking Pamela, and thank you for indulging that. But oftentimes as managers, we're also responsible for ourselves, but also for others that we lead. So there's actually a lot more now than at the beginning of the pandemic. I think that's a positive message I want to leave you all. And I really think when we say that it's okay not to be okay, I think we have to live it. I think we have to actually admit it and say it, not just it's okay for you over there to not be okay, but I am too brave to say that I've struggled. And I think this is certainly in our female circles, where I always feel accepted and nurtured and not judged. So I want to thank everybody on this call for doing that. And for you in WIN Rome, you're my champions going through this really difficult period in a very difficult place. And you're doing all of this to share and to provide resources. I just think it's fantastic speakers and all of that. So I think we continue to, whatever we do, let's continue to invite one another. So I think that's how we maximize the resources that we have. So that's all from my side for now. But thank you.
Great, thank you, Daniela. And if you could forward to me, I don't think I saw the compilation email from Xenia on the resources, and I'll make sure I forward it on to WIN Rome.
I'll make sure that you get it.
Perfect, great. And I'd love to see that
survey
some of the
things
as well.
are New York specific, just so you know. I mean, if you see something there, there's like New York hotline, things like that, obviously be mindful that it's maybe some of the items are specific to us, but majority of the tools are actually for anywhere, but I'll share that as well.
And since we're global and many people are teleworking from other places, I think we actually have some of our WIN Rome members in New York and DC and other places. So it's great that we're sharing the information, because we're really a global, we are all global citizens working for the UN. So it's great to share these different resources. And so now I'll just close. Again, thank you so much, Pam. I so am grateful to you for sharing your time and your expertise in mindfulness. And I certainly I'm leaving this meeting feeling much lighter and better. So thank you for that. And good night, everyone. Have a good evening or good day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Chitra. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.